All right, everyone, welcome to, this is going to be our final day for the Hashing Over History program for the Sesquicentennial. So we got a large crowd today. I don't have head count, but I'm seeing 35 or 40 people out there, and thank you for coming. Again, it's going to be a double header. We got Charlie that's going to be talking after Carol. But I'm Tom LaClair. I'm the Clayton historian. I welcome you out again to the Clayton Sesquicentennial Hashing Over History series. This is a Thousand Islands Museum program, and as the historian, I partner with the museum. We're also partnering with the Sesquicentennial Committee this year, the Clayton Opera House, to bring you these wonderful programs. Again, just as a reminder, we've had 10 programs already. They're all up online, YouTube, so take the time, go out and watch them. When you don't have much going on in your home, you can just have them on and be listening while you're doing other functions around the house. But again, we got Carol Williams today. As you can see, she's got a wonderful display. You'll get a chance to see these closer afterwards, after she talks about them. But we're thankful that she's sharing of her wealth of knowledge, her library that is right up here, the Carol Williams Library, and it's a very extensive collection. Carol, the time is yours to share your library with us.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everybody. Okay, I'm going to talk to you today about my family. The Fluckiger family. I was Fluckiger before I was married. My mother was an Eckert. She was from the Farshville. I'm not going to talk about her as much as I do about my father, mostly because you are Clayton people and you're more interested in Clayton history probably than you are in the Farshville history. So I will start at the beginning. My grandfather's name was Joseph Fluckiger, and he came to this country in 1896. He married Effie Robbins from Fisher's Landing in 1898. They had 6 children. There was Luther, he was the oldest, and then the next one was Charlie, that was my father. Then there was Gerald and Jurgen and Catherine. And then there was another baby girl, but she died shortly after birth. So my father was born in 1901. And okay, all right. Get my bearings here. This family lived on State Street in Clayton, which is across the bridge. It's the left-hand side, right after you go across the bridge. It's the first house, which is kind of down in a little hole there by the bridge. At one time was O'Brien's. I don't know if it's still O'Brien's or not. But then the next house was where my father was born. My grandparents lived there. All of the children were born in that house. And the property is still pretty much today the same as it was back then. My grandfather was what they called a truck gardener at that time, and he had a lot of vegetables planted. He had a good garden at the house there, and then up on the east Peeler Road, he had a big garden up there too. And my father used to talk about how they raised muskmelons up behind the Tiffy's, what we used to call Tiffy's, Crystal Springs now. And so the boys used to peddle these vegetables, probably by horse and buggy for a while until cars came into being. But they also peddled the vegetables by boat, because they went to the islands, and people would buy their produce. And he did very well with that. It was a profitable business for him. Of course, he had 4 sons that could help him, and I'm sure that was a big help. And unfortunately, though, he didn't live very long after. He died when my father was 17. He went to Augsburg because he had stomach problems, and they operated on him, and he died shortly after that. And I have here, these are some postcards. Of course, they didn't have telephones back then, so they sent they sent postcards. And is this echoing? No,
That's fine.
okay. This is dated September 9th, and this is 1919. Now, this is my grandfather. Had examination just now. Doctor says tumor of the stomach. He will take x-ray soon and operate tomorrow. This is good news to me. Kisses and hugs to all from Dad, signed Joe. And then the next day he wrote, I may be in operating room shortly for tumor on stomach. Took care of yourself and don't work too hard. Yours as ever, Joseph. And then he died that same day, and I have the obituary here. It says, Clayton man born in Alsace, France. Joseph C. Fluckiger died following operation in Augsburg. That was 1919. So, obviously, after he died, and my mother had 5 children, what do we do now? So, I guess she wasn't interested in continuing with the gardening like he had been doing and raising produce. And I have his diary here. And in that diary, he wrote about the crops that he planted and how much he picked. And he would, he wrote, I planted 100 cabbages. Well, that's a lot of cabbages. Or I picked 20 bushes of tomatoes. And so that was his livelihood, and he enjoyed it, and he did it well. But then after he died, I don't know if you're aware of that property, but it's a beautiful piece of property. There's a large expanse of lawn in the middle there. As I said, O'Brien's used to live on the left there, and then the Harbor Inn was in that building, which was not there at that time. And then the house where they lived was at the back. There was a big barn, there was a big yard. And so she decided to build cabins. And so she had many cabins built there. And they were quite popular. I remember this as I was a girl. I lived on Teresa Street at that time, and I could walk across the bridge and visit my grandparents. And I also used to visit the campers. I was 9 when I moved to Teresa Street, so, I was 10 or so, and 11, and I would be over there, and I made a lot of friends with all the people that were camping at my grandmother's. And it's funny, I still remember some of those people to this day. One man in particular that I remember, he came to camp up there, came to fish, came by himself. I'm not aware if he had any lady friend or whatever, but he always came by himself. And he always ate shredded wheat. Every time I saw him, he was eating shredded wheat. So I called him the shredded wheat man. And it was fun for me to be able to walk around and see all those people that lived there. And so then, I'm losing my place here. When I was born, my parents lived in Bldg, and we moved to the village. I was about 2 years old or so. We lived on Riverside Drive, and then when I was about 3, I think, when we moved over to Webb Street. And of course, I don't remember what happened when I was 3, but I do remember, I have a lot of other memories that were there. I had a lot of good friends, a lot of nice playmates. Frances Helen was one of them. Frances Mary Rusho also lived there. She lived next to me. And her father, Jasper, was a caretaker on Round Island. And he used to take his daughter, Frances Mary, and myself to Round Island and you went too, yeah. And we would go for the day because he would be gone all day working over there. And I don't know what it's like over there now, but at that time, Round Island had a lot of big, remember those big flat rocks? And the cottages were on the perimeter of the island, and in the back of the cottages is where these rocks were. And we used to play out there, and like this rock would be the living room, and this rock was bedroom. And of course, we brought our dolls and whatever we wanted to do. But I remember that, and that was a fun time. Let's see. The principal, when I went to school, his name was Ball. He lived across the street from us. I can't remember his first name. Do you remember?
I remember Charles.
He had 4 daughters. One of them was Zoe Ball. Anyways, he lived in that house where it was directly across the street from where I lived on Webb Street, and it was a big house, had cupola up on top, and so when we would play over there, we could go up on the cupola, and there's really nothing up there except that you can just look out and see all over the town, which was, I guess, kind of exciting. And they had a back stairway in that house, which also intrigued me. I had never seen a back stairway before. So that was fun, just to go up the back stairway. It was a novel, something different. And somebody say something? As I said, Frances Helen and Frances Mary, and then the Ball girls lived across the street. And then in the back on Merrick Street was Betty Ferguson. I played with her. And Rosemary Pilo, I played with her. And I believe Rosemary is still alive. That's correct, I think so, yeah. So it was a fun time on Webb Street there. My father had a female dog, which he called Witch. And she was an Irish setter. She was a beautiful dog. And I can remember playing with her. And she was, I guess early on in my years, I decided that I wanted to be a nurse. And she was my patient. So I was always doctoring her up with something or other and bandaging her feet and whatever. And she was the kind of dog that would just let you do anything. And then she had a litter of pups, and we kept one of the pups, and we named him Skeets. And Skeets was a fun dog too, and he followed me around and did everything that I did. But the one thing that he did, which was very unusual, is he was always bringing home toys, stuffed toys. Almost every day he'd bring home a stuffed toy, for me, I guess. And then my mother would take the toy and try and find out who it belonged to. I guess sometimes she did and sometimes she didn't. So, I started school there. I didn't go to school till I was 6. There was no kindergarten back then. But, of course, being on Webb Street, the school located over where the police, the municipal building now, I could walk to school, and so that I would do that. Of course, neighborhood kids got together and we walked to school. And it was a fun time. It was a good time. I remember the building in the school. Everything was wood. The floors, of course, were wood. The walls were wood. Windows were bare. It seemed like there was no color. It was all just wood. And the one thing I remember about going to school there was I had a problem, I guess you might call it, with talking too much in my classes. And so my teachers would frequently send me out in the hall, stand out in the hall. I don't know if that ever happened to any of the rest of you. You got sent out in the hall. And of course there was nothing to do out there except stand there. Well, okay, and as I said, the principal lives across the street, Mr. Ball, and he knew me well. And if he would come out of his office and I was standing outside the door, well, I had to go to the bathroom. So I would leave my post by the schoolroom door and walk down to the bathroom. And of course, he knew what was going on, but he never said anything. But, so it was an interesting time, you know. And then I moved over to Theresa Street when I was 9. And it used to be called Frenchtown then. I don't know if you still hear that term anymore or not, but I haven't heard it. That was a totally different life over there because we were a block from the river. Reese Street was practically right across the street from the house where we lived. And my father had a big boathouse down there with Clark Jackson. And he and Clark used to guide. And of course, I was down there a lot. I used to swim from the dock down there. It was weedy, sometimes snaky. But we had fun. We had fun doing that. And then, as I told you, I went to school where the municipal building is now. And I was in the first class that moved up to the new school. I was in the 8th grade at that time. And I had Mr. Duquette as my homeroom teacher. Anybody remember him? He wasn't my favorite. He didn't want to put up with my nonsense. Remember Hilda Donahue? She was one of my teachers then too, and high school was a fun time for me. School was easy for me. I didn't have to really work, and my cards. What do you call them? Report cards. Yeah. The teacher would always say, "Capable of doing better." Well, I guess I wasn't interested in doing better. I was more interested in having fun, having a good time. So that's what I did, and I managed. I got through okay. Yeah. This is a program that presented by grades 1, 2, and 3. It's called In the Garden by the Old Shoe, and all the people that are listed here that were in this play, and you'll recognize a lot of the names if you want to look at that later. And this is a picture from grade school, very small, hard to see who's who. This one is bigger, this one from grade school. And of course all the girls wore dresses. And you might want to look at that. I mean, you'll probably pick out some people that you know in there. And I did write on the back if you want to figure out who's who, and it's very interesting. At the same time, I went to the Methodist Church in Clayton, and Louise Markham was my Sunday school teacher at one time, when I was little. And this is a promotion card from the 2nd grade primary Methodist Church, October 4th, 1936, and it's signed by Mrs. Markham. So, let's see, where do I go next? When we moved to Theresa Street, my father had the boathouse down at the end of Reese Street, and he was a fishing guide, and a good fishing guide, and he enjoyed it, and he would cook the shore dinners, and that was a lot of work, but he enjoyed it, and he was good at what he did. He also worked for a gentleman called Alex McIntosh, and Alex McIntosh was the owner of Fackney Instrument Corporation in Watertown. Maybe some of you have heard of that. They used to make thermometers. Well, he had a cottage up on Route 12E on the river, and my father worked for him for quite a few years. And he did a lot of stonework up there. He, as I said, he did a lot of everything when he was up there. He was kind of a chauffeur, his cook, his gardener, his maintenance man, his chauffeur. I remember he would call up at all hours of the night and say to my father, "I want to go to Boston." 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but you know, what he had to go to Boston for at 3 o'clock in the morning, I never found out, but the pay was good, and my father was patient. And so he would drive him wherever he wanted to go. And he took him fishing all the time. And then he would cook the fish when he got back, after cleaning it, of course. And my father was a very avid hunter and fisherman, in addition to being a guide. I have a couple of pictures here of deer that he took in 1959, and fish also. And he was a very good marksman. And there's a picture here of all the participants in this, I guess it was a shooting match, and he did well in that, yeah. So, I'm rambling, I know. After my grandfather died and my grandmother built the cottages, there's a picture here of the cottages, and this one picture is very interesting, taken from across the street, and there's no trees. Well, there are little trees, just, hardly any trees at all. Do you remember where the library was before it's where it is now?
Somewhere in the downtown.
Where is it now?
I think was it in the downtown, right in one of the buildings?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe here?
No,
No?
the library, no, I don't believe they.
I thought the library was in this building at one time.
Maybe it was. I don't remember that it was. I do remember though that it was on Riverside Drive there, and it was, I think it was the building where Mary Lane has her gift shop. Am I right about that? Yeah. I'm going back a long time. Yeah, but I've always been an avid library person. I like books. I like to read. Yeah. So I should tell you about some of the jobs that I had when I was in high school. I did a lot of babysitting. Didn't pay very much, but I guess it was enough at the time. I thought it was good, especially on New Year's Eve when you got $5. That was wonderful. I wonder how much they get on New Year's Eve. They probably get $25 now at least.
Yeah.
And I guess I was reliable because I always had a lot of babysitting jobs. And one lady that I used to babysit for in Clayton here, and of course I won't mention any names, but she had a problem with speaking clearly, and she couldn't pronounce her R's, and she pronounced her R's like a W. And so her little girl was a little girl that I was babysitting, and she'd be in her bed, and she'd be in her room, and she'd call out for her mother. And I would say, "I'm right here." And another, it wasn't a babysitting job, it was a house sitting job. And this was very different. I'm sure not too many people ever got to do this, but there was a funeral home on James Street, located in the house where James Bertrand lived. And it was a Butts funeral home, B-U-T-T-S. And you remember that? Yeah. So I used to sit there for them. Of course, there were no children. They apparently never had any children that I'm aware of. But he needed somebody there to answer the phone in case somebody called that somebody had died. So I used to do that, and my friends would say, "Ooh, aren't you afraid to stay there?" I said, "No, heck no, they're not going to bother anybody." So, yeah. I babysat for Audrey Barabon. Do anybody remember Audrey? She had a little store over on the corner. It's where the museum office is now, and she had, I believe, 2 children, and babysat for her. So, and actually my first job was babysitting my cousin Joe. I worked for him. I worked for his mother every day. I got $5 a week. Wasn't that great? And some other jobs that I had, down on Riverside Drive, next to where all there's Bella's, and then there's the big apartment buildings there. There was a rooming house that was there. It was owned by Gillick's, and he had a marina in back of the boarding house, and I worked for her one summer. I cleaned rooms and toilets. And he would, the fishing guides would come there to gas up their boats before they went out. And his wife used to put up the shore dinners in the big baskets, and so that was what she did. But then when they came back at night, then it was my job to clean up the fish baskets, and then the great big greasy frying pan must have been that big around, right, Tom? And I remember too when I would first start there in the summertime, the place would just be covered with eel flies. Remember eel flies? Do we still have eel flies?
They're getting less and less all the time.
Really? Well,
20 years ago was the last big hatch I see.
really?
All downtown Clayton, if you looked on the street, you just see the sparkling of all the wings of all the dragonflies on the street all the way down.
Yeah, well, when I went to work for Florence Gillick, one of the first things I had to do in the morning was sweep down the front porch and the sidewalk and the steps, and it would just be covered with those eel flies. They were gross.
I remember when the cars go down the street, you hear the popping of the bugs.
I bet, yeah. It's funny the things you remember as you get older. And then I also worked for Craig Aikens. He had a grocery store downtown. I believe it was called the American Store. And it was along in there next to the Legion, I believe. Might be where that restaurant is. Do you remember the store? Where that was? Yeah.
I remember it being there somewhere, but I don't remember where.
Yeah. Well, I was a cashier there that winter, and so I was always up front there by the window, and that was kind of nice because you could see people going by all the time. And I worked with Mary Golke. Some of you may remember Mary. And it was an enjoyable experience to work there with her. And let's see, what else can I tell you?
How'd you meet your hubby?
Yeah.
How did I meet my husband?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
That has nothing to do with Clayton history. What?
He was the later part of his life. You turned into one of those.
You can talk about anything you want to talk about.
Well, I thought I was confined to, well, anyways.
Did you see him at a dance? Did you go to...
You're a troublemaker.
Yeah.
River rat.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, I was going to college in Plattsburgh, and he was going to college at the same time. He was going to Champlain College. And he had a very good friend that he roomed with, and the story that he tells is the friend's name was Jimmy, and Jimmy said, "What do you say we go see if we can find a couple of nice girls?" So the Plattsburgh College was having a picnic, and so of course everybody was there at the picnic, including myself, and so the guys came to the picnic, and we got to talking, and you know, I thought he was kind of cute. And I don't know if I should tell you this or not. We were eating watermelon, and they used to call twins that were joined, they used to call them Siamese twins. Remember that? Well, he said to me, "How do Siamese twins eat watermelon?" I said, "I don't know." Well, one eats the watermelon, the other one spits out the seeds. That's how we started. I'm probably blushing. That was his sense of humor, I guess. Yeah. So we had 71 good years together.
Carol, was your profession were you a nurse?
Pardon me?
Were you a nurse? You said you liked being...
Yes, I was a nurse. Yeah. That's not about Clayton either.
We're learning about you too.
Okay. When I was in high school, I was very good friends with Virginia Hyde. Some of you may remember her. I believe she's still alive. She lives in New Jersey. And we occasionally, send a Christmas card or something, but I don't really keep in touch with her. But her mother was a teacher in the high school. Her name was Hazel Hyde. And Hazel was a big influence on my life. She, I think she recognized my potential, I guess you could call it, to be a nurse. And I had her for, I took Latin. I can't believe it. I took Latin for 3 years from her. And, but she's the one who encouraged me to go to nursing school. And she encouraged me to go to Plattsburgh, which was a 4-year program. And I'm awfully glad I did that because I graduated with a degree, Bachelor of Science, and whereas most nursing schools at that time were a 3-year program. And I'm not degrading a 3-year program by any means because I've known many, many wonderful, excellent nurses that were 3-year program graduates, so yeah. So, what else you want to know?
You must have seen a little bit of some few fish stories around the end of French Creek there. In the springtime, it must have been quite a happening place. All the cabins all lit up and everybody, all the lanterns up and down the creek. And
Yeah, I do
I got
remember.
the big one, I got the big one.
I do remember when they were fishing at night there with the lanterns, and one thing I remember in particular was everybody used to catch eels, and I thought they were the worst looking things. They're just like snakes, and he would come home with a whole pail full of these wiggly, squirrely things in this pail. And then he had a grill built in the backyard there, where the homestead is now. And he would smoke them. And I guess some people liked them, because he smoked a lot of them, and I guess he sold them. But it was repulsive to me because of the looks of the eel, and they were all squirming in the pail. But then when he would smoke them, the smell to me was bad, very bad.
And then there was quite a few snapping turtles back then. I remember people catching snapping turtles and hanging them before they eat them.
Really?
Up on the end of French Creek, yeah. I remember years ago, we used to have big ones. And now we just have smaller ones.
I don't remember that, no.
Carol, is Case Fluckiger a relative of yours?
Yes, she's my aunt. She was my
That
aunt.
was the Case Motel, right?
Don Lingenfelter owns that motel. He's my cousin, my first cousin, yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Hey, Carol, so hashing over history, I understand you have connections to hashing over history in years past. What can you tell us? Someone told me that you used to introduce the speakers.
I did.
You did.
I recruited them too.
So you're going to work with me in the future?
Sure. Sign me up, I'd be happy to help you. Yeah, I'd be happy to help you. That was a fun time when I was doing that, yeah. We had a lot of very interesting people that came and talked to us, and actually, Bob recorded most of those programs, so they're probably in the archives over there somewhere. I'm sure they are, yeah. It was good. It was right, Linda, where are you? Yeah,
I've got a question about, you met your husband at Lasper.
I'm sorry, I can't hear
You
you.
met your husband at college.
Mhm.
Now, how long when you got out of college, did he and you come back to Clayton, or did you stay somewhere else? Was he here in Clayton?
He was from New Jersey,
Right?
and I graduated from Plattsburgh State Teachers College at that time on June 12th, 1950. I graduated in the morning. We got married in the afternoon.
That makes no time.
Did you come back to Clayton then?
Well, of course, my parents were there, and his parents too, and my father never liked to get dressed up. If he had to get dressed up, it was somebody's funeral or he never wanted to get dressed up. So I said, well, if I get married, or if I graduate in the morning, get married in the afternoon, you only have to get dressed up once.
Good plan.
How's that? So that's what we did, yeah. And then we spent our first night in the Arlington Hotel in Potsdam. I believe it's still standing, right? Yeah. And then, ironically, my granddaughter, Tom's daughter, she lived there for a while she was going to Potsdam. So that was kind of funny. And then I mentioned that I had worked for Craig Aikens, and Craig Aikens had a little island down by Fisher's Landing, and I don't know if it had a name or not. I never heard the name, but that's where we stayed for our honeymoon on Craig's Island. So, yeah, long time ago.
And then did you live here right after college?
No, we lived in Plattsburgh for a couple of months, and the Korean War had broken out, and Bob figured he was probably going to be going. So we moved to New Jersey. I was pregnant already, And we moved to New Jersey, and we lived with his parents for a couple of months, and then we got our own place, yeah. When we bought our first house in New Jersey, it was $12,000. And I remember saying to Bob, do you think we did the right thing? What else do you want to know?
When did you come back to Clayton?
When did I come back to Clayton? 76, yeah. We had 4 children, but when we came back to Clayton, Tom came with us. You were about 18, and Barbara was 13, yeah. The other 2 were off on their own by then. Yeah.
Did you remember the names of the other guides that were in that boathouse besides Clark?
I've got a whole list of the guides here somewhere.
Was Ferguson in the first one, his grandfather in the second one, Clark Jackson in the third one. The last one, I don't know, that boat never went out, and the guy was never there, and he wasn't a fishing guy. And I can't remember who was in he didn't go, the fourth one didn't go out very much either, but the first 3 went out a lot.
The first 3 what?
Went out fishing a lot, the last 2 didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, this is, I'll pass this around because this is,
Keep the names on it,
yeah, Clayton Guides Association.
or not.
What'd you say? Are you happy? As I said, he had a lot of patience, so I guess that's why he did so well at guiding, because some of those people were didn't know tit from tat.
Your dad and your grandfather tore down a lot of places around Clayton, didn't he? Because was it Urban Fluckiger that tore down a lot of places?
I think it was Jurgen, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He was a demolition expert.
I heard a lot about different buildings that he tore down. A lot of the material went into Clayton.
Yeah.
I think the yacht club might have been built by him. Maybe not.
So would that have been your uncle? Your
Or
Yeah.
grandfather. Oh.
Yeah. This diary is from my grandfather, and it's 1914. And in here, he talks about taking down docks and putting up piles, yeah.
Because back then, when they tore down a building, they didn't just tear it down and throw it away. It went somewhere and got built up again.
One of the things that he talks about in this diary, 1914, he talks about they tore down a bowling alley. Now, where would that have been?
Could have been out on Club Island. There was a bowling alley.
Or maybe Round Island.
Round Island,
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I know the bowling alley in town wasn't in existence then. Yeah, this is a very interesting diary. He keeps track of all the stuff that he planted and what he picked and
Are you going to donate that to the museum someday?
probably.
Glad to hear that.
If Tom will let it go, he's saying no.
We owe, at least share a copy with us. Share copies.
I'm so glad that he's interested in history. It's been wonderful, I have a lot of diaries at home. Diaries from my grandmother and my mother, some of mine. My mother's diaries, some of you knew my mother. Most of her diaries were about all her card games she played. Remember Becky? And her greatest thrill was to beat Jimmy Graves. If she could see Jimmy Craig, she was happy. Yeah.
Carol, what we'll do at this point is, I want to give you this certificate, and thank you very much for sharing. You have a lot of information here on the table, so we're going to invite folks to come on up,
Okay.
ask you questions, look at what you have, share more details. But
Thank you very
again,
much.
we all appreciate you. You've been coming to all the programs. Has it been perfect attendance for you? You've been here for?
No.
No?
I didn't get back from Florida until the middle of January,
okay.
so the first 3 I think I missed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we know that you, again, when I was talking at the beginning, you have a lot of history, and not only Clayton, but just your life history is interesting. So, again, here's a certificate
Thank
for
you.
participating in the program.